Welcome to the Riding in the Weeds podcast, where we tackle life's inevitable challenges, from navigating mountain bike trails to overcoming business hurdles and forging deeper connections with pets and people. It's easy to find yourself tangled in the weeds, but we're here to help with insights and strategies that'll get you out of the weeds. Our goal is to boost your performance in both sports and everyday life by sharing essential skills that we've learnt along the way. Through tales of our entrepreneurship journey, thrilling biking adventures, and fostering meaningful relationships, your hosts, Natasha, Lockey, and Ginny, Branden, will guide you on a journey that's not only enjoyable, but also inspiring. Join us to gain confidence that you need to navigate the trails of life. Hello and welcome to episode 72 of Riding in the Weeds. We are diving into the topic of time today. And just to be completely transparent, we've not been here for a little bit. And that's because we've been lost in space. So we're going to have a conversation about how time sometimes feels like you're going nowhere fast. And sometimes it feels like you're going everywhere all at once. And what the things we can do to adjust and calibrate our mindset when we're feeling out of sorts because we're either overly busy or we're actually not busy. And not being busy in today's world is actually really hard to manage and does some funky things to your brain. We're just going to dive right on in. Stay with us, and we'll also let you know where we've been for the last little bit, and hoping you're still with us. So, Ginny, are you there?
I think so. Some days I don't really know, but I think so. Are you there, though? Is the other question.
I'm not really sure where I am. I have been on a journey. And even today, when Ginny and I jumped on, I'm sitting here and my alarm goes off, and we had an earthquake, which is an interesting thing to feel when you're in a camper. The earthquakes whenever you stand up or jiggle or move. So we're like, is it? Oh yeah, no, we're having an earthquake, and then we got tsunami warnings, and I'm right on the coast. So Ginny and I have been rather distracted, trying to get to this whole topic of time, and not to mention us having to catch up because we did get lost in space for a little bit here. We didn't mean to take a break, but things have just been a little hectic. Have things been hectic? I don't know. In your world, are you guys feeling this? Is this an energetic thing, or is it just us?
I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think it is a bit of an energetic thing. I think there's some things going on cosmically. I'm not really into all of that world, but what I notice is patterns, and I feel like I've been seeing a lot of patterns lately that have this sort of like time is not flowing the way it has been, and I don't have an explanation for that, but I feel like I've really been in the weeds the last couple weeks. And I was commenting before we jumped on that it's been strange because I'll write myself my little to-do list in the morning. I'll have 4 or 5 tasks on there that I want to do, none of which should really take that long. These are like little to-do checklist things, just daily life administrative stuff, right? And I'll get to the end of the day and I'm like, I did one thing. I'm like, what the hell happened? Where did it go? Because it's not like I was doom scrolling all day or I was wasting my time. I mean, okay, there's probably 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour somewhere in there I could have improved my productivity. But that's not that much in the greater scheme of things. And it's like, what happened? I have ended up a lot of days being like, I don't know what just happened here. But I feel nowhere closer to the task list of things that I would like to accomplish right now than I was this morning or yesterday or the day before that. And I'm like, I'm just struggling to wrap my head around, are we in some sort of a different timeline that I just need to adjust my expectations maybe? I don't know. But none of it feels like anything that would be like, yeah, there's days when I look at my to-do list and I'm like, yeah, that's probably not happening. This doesn't feel like that. This feels like I'm not being unrealistic. And that's what's been so baffling about the whole thing.
Yeah. Oh, and I totally hear you on that. I actually connected with my friend yesterday. I messaged her and she calls me. She's like, how is it that like we used to talk every day and now like we haven't spoken to each other for like 3 weeks? And it doesn't even feel like it's been 3 weeks. But she's like, I've just been in it. There's just been so much life happening that, and Ian and I were discussing, like we left Alert Bay, I want to say it was the 9th of November. And what are we today? So we're recording this on the 5th of December. So it's been almost a month. But like a week ago, we're looking at each other and we're like, it actually had been 2 weeks. And both of us, I was like, I feel like it's been a lifetime. It feels like we've been on the road for months and months and months. And we have literally gone nowhere.
Yeah.
We went in circles and it's been like this whole concept of time. We left and we needed to be somewhere in 4 days. And so it was like, well, we've got to get there, but we don't want to get there any sooner than we need to be there because then there's going to be nowhere for us to be. And so 4 days wasn't very long, but then it felt like a long time. But then we somehow took 4 days to drive the distance that would take a day, and our days were completely full, and we had no time to do anything except for drive like 100 kilometers. And I'm with you. It feels like there's this vortex going on. Side note, I went to the Oregon vortex, but which had nothing to do with losing time. So that doesn't explain it. And yeah, being in the weeds like that, I'm not even sure my to-do list, I don't even know what's on it. And I've been struggling to get up in the morning. I've been like stuck in this fantasy book, stories from great book, but 7 of them. And I actually got to the point where I was like, well, I don't have anywhere to be, plenty of time to film a podcast, but nowhere to be to do it.
Yeah.
And stuck inside with my husband and my dog, and honestly feeling like, who am I to get on to a podcast and talk about getting out of the weeds when I am so heavily, I'm not just in the weeds, I'm in the weeds in the freaking marshes, in the jungle, in the swamp, and I don't even know what's like.
Yeah.
Things are falling apart and I don't even know how to put them back together right now. So, yeah.
I think that's important, though, that we just acknowledge that you're never going to get rid of the weeds in life. There will always be weeds of life, somehow, some way. And really, it's just simply a matter of learning tools that help you get out faster, help you recognize where you are faster, and help keep you from being stuck there. That's all it really is not that you're never going to go into the weeds. It's that you learn to not be stuck in them. But the flip side of that coin is sometimes I think it's okay. What if it's okay to struggle to get up in the morning sometimes? What if it's just okay? I was dealing with that about a week or so ago. I would love to have known, like, when you were dealing with that exactly. I won't even be able to remember, so we're not going to try. Sometimes the universal energy just goes sideways. We've had a lot of cosmic events this year. There have been a lot of solar flares, which absolutely 100% affect technology and things like that. I saw the northern lights here. It actually happened twice. I only got to see them once, but it happened twice. There have been so many things that are happening. So what if we can just acknowledge that sometimes it's not us? And it's not up to us to do anything about it, and that it's okay sometimes to feel like you're going nowhere fast. And we can just be okay with that for a time, knowing that it will change whether we do anything or not. Because change is the only constant in the universe anyway. So what if we put a little less pressure on ourselves to try and make it change and just allow it to change? But again, keep going back to our tools that we know we have that help support ourselves through those times. I think that's all we need to do.
Well, and maybe if you're feeling it too and you're understanding what we're saying and you've been feeling it, please reach out and let us know. We would really love to hear from you. And if you have friends that you know have been struggling in this area as well, please share this with them, because I personally am feeling like there is this force that is really asking me to be okay with nothing, because there's really nothing. I'm in this in between and there's nothing to do. And all summer, I kept saying, we're going to Mexico. And inside of me, there was this like, I don't know if I am.
This is so hard because I've had that happen numerous times. There was one Christmas that I was not going to see another Christmas in that house. And sure enough, I moved before the year was over. I moved by June. But I didn't know how that was going to happen.
Right.
And it's kind of terrifying when you get those little messages. But that's where what if we don't have to do anything? What if there is no next step to do in that moment? What if we just allow that moment to be and just keep doing the things that are in front of us that support ourselves through the moment instead of trying to make something happen or figure it out?
Yeah. And I've had this sense, maybe I stay at the lodge in Alert Bay and I just sit and watch the storms go by. That felt right but wrong. And I was like, that's not what we're going to do. But essentially, we're moving into that environment, but even more isolated. And my friend said to me yesterday, she's like, well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with yourself? And I was like, well, I can get up in the morning and exercise, do my yoga, do my qigong, do the projects and the work that I want to do. And we're in a situation where we're going to be getting paid to live and do daily chores. And, well, then what are you going to do? You can't go snowboarding. You can't do this. You can't do that. It's like, well, maybe that's okay. You know, what did people used to do in the winter? Hunker down and read books.
They've been making snowshoes for thousands of years.
Right.
So
we're getting snow skis. That sounded stupid because I realized all skis.
I mean, you could be getting water skis, which would sound even stupider. So
we're going to get snowshoe skis. They're a cross between a snowshoe and a ski. So
cool.
The idea is, instead of cross-country skis, I'll be able to like go and break trail like I would on snowshoes. But the ultimate thing I hate about snowshoes is you can't go up a hill. Because if you go up a hill, you got to go down the hill. And if you go up a really big hill, all I want to do is slide back down the hill. And you can't slide down on snowshoes. So we're getting these skis that are short. And they're kind of like snowshoes, so you can get around places. But then when you want to slide, you can slide. The retreat is happening in January. And right now it's, well, you know what? If you listen to this podcast, you can get the discounted deal. Just reach out to me. I'll give you the code, which is $300 off in the US. I think it's $400 off for Canadians. We have a couple of spots left. And so I do get to go to Mexico, which is amazing, but only for 10 days. And my point being is that I need to be fit enough, because I'm not going to have a motorbike. I'm not going to have a e-bike to ride. I'm going to borrow a friend's bike, and it won't be nearly as fancy as the bikes I normally ride. And so I need to have some fitness. And if I'm just sitting around drinking hot cider and making cookies, this isn't going to go well.
No, that would not go well for your January fitness goals.
No, I got to look good in a bikini. I got to be able to fit into my wetsuit, and I need to be able to pedal up a hill and not have a heart attack in front of a bunch of probably quite fit human beings. It'll be like, really? This is our bike coach? She's been on an interesting trip. She's not that fit right now. So
That's funny.
yeah, but
Yeah,
I think I was, and before we jumped on, we were talking about this topic, and this came to me last night. I'm like, going nowhere fast. And one of the things that I mentioned to Ginny, if you've ever fasted, like not eaten for 24 hours or more, it's fascinating how quickly you realize that you spend a lot of time eating. And when you're not eating, there's this void. So you do your work, you eat, you do your work, you eat, you do your work, you do whatever it is you're doing, but it's broken up by eating. So if there's no eating, you have all these things to do, but the truth is you don't want to be doing things the whole time. So there are certain activities that we do in our day-to-day life that break up and give you permission to stop working. If you stop watching TV, you're like, now what do I do?
Yeah.
Now it's like you actually have to be intentional. Well, you could meditate. You could do yoga. You could exercise. You could play a board game with your family. You could read a book. There are so many things, but most of those things are things that we avoid consciously by not having enough time.
Yeah. It's interesting, especially when you're talking about the fasting, because not only is it just the eating, but it's the preparation.
Yeah.
It's the planning. It's the going to the grocery store. And if you're going to fast for a day, that's going to leave a massive void in your time. And I think that's where it is important to be conscious and intentional about what you're choosing to do to fill that time. And, you're in a holding pattern waiting to be in the next place at the next time. And it's just another opportunity to be intentional about how you choose to spend the time. And I think the one thing I would say is that it's easy to confuse being intentional with productivity. And I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. That being intentional just means you're choosing how you want to spend your time. And that can be relaxing. That can be taking downtime. That can be choosing not to follow some of your routines that you follow religiously all the other days of the year. There's nothing wrong with deciding you want to take a break from yoga or from meditation or from whatever routines that you have. Nothing says you actually have to do those 365 days a year. It's great for the little counter in your timer thing and it gives you stars, but nothing says you have to. You could do 6 days and choose to take the 7th day off. That's a pretty normal routine that's very common in our culture, right? That was the whole point of the Sabbath. The idea of the Sabbath was to take a break. So being intentional, though, doesn't mean that you are being productive per se. It just means you're choosing how to spend that time. And I think that's what's most important when you're remembering, like, okay, so you're in a holding pattern, you're waiting, you're going nowhere fast, but that means you have an opportunity to decide how you want to spend that time in a way that feels valuable to you, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. And that's really, I think that's such an important point because we are so attached to our productivity being related to who we are.
And value.
And value. I actually had this thought while running the other. Do I have value if I'm not fit and thin? Does that take away the value of who I am? Not because I'm not looking a certain way, but because my perception of myself is attached to certain things that I do. And so if I'm not doing those certain things, whether it's exercise, whether it's work on the computer, whether it's whatever, am I still a valid human being? If my day-to-day work is purely just removing snow, cooking, making sure the house is clean, I think this is the whole females moving into the workforce, is that there was no value placed on one of the most valuable jobs in the world, which is raising children and homesteading, right? The most valuable thing that we need to do as humans is the day-to-day take care of ourselves. Yeah. And that is the one thing that has been thrown out the window in our daily culture, is we have removed the space to take care of ourselves and take care of having a nice environment to be in, whether that's your body or that's your home, your relationships, your community. And all of that has been stuffed in the second run. I saw a thing the other day that was a chart of how we spent our time from 1950s to now. And obviously in 1950s, online was 0. Family was at the top, and all of these different things in between, and online and work kind of sat at the bottom, and all of this other stuff was what was important. And now 80% of our time is spent online. And everything else, family, self-care, community, all of that stuff has just been stuffed into the 20% that we have left. And you can see what that's saying. And I think, I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I was watching a reel, and it was an old timer movie. And it was these people, the sales guy is like, well, I want to buy the washing machine and the fridge and the things. And the guy's like, yeah, but this is going to cost me money. Oh, they're not that expensive. Yeah, but okay, I buy the appliance, so it's going to save me time. But now I have to afford the electricity to run the appliance, which means I now have to go to work more in order to get more money. And so by buying this washing machine or this vacuum cleaner, I'm actually just getting back time. So sure, I'm saving time, but now all of my time is going to go to the work I have to do, which is going to take me away from my family, and it's going to take me away from all these things that are valuable. And it really hit home. I was like, that.
Yeah. Well, and I think what you're highlighting there is that, like, the crux of the matter is that, like, for example, buying a washing machine is going to save you time because the washing machine reduces the amount of time you have to spend running the clothes. But if you have to work more in order to be able to afford the washing machine, then what is the payoff there? And I think we would do well to be much more critical of the things in our lives that claim they're going to make our lives better. Because I have a feeling many of them come with that kind of a trade-off that actually doesn't create any overall improvement. At best, you're breaking even. You've just moved the effort or the energy or the money or the time somewhere else. I think we need to be more critical about that around everything on our phones. I think we need to be more critical about that, about all the other devices in our lives. Cars do crazy, wild things now with lots of sophisticated technology, but are they actually improving things for us on the whole? Or are we running the risk of losing something in that process? The beauty of it is that the internet and our phones and things like that, they're allowing us to connect across thousands and thousands of miles away from each other and to be able to share this around the globe. So there is value in it, but are we actually focused on getting the value out of it, or are we allowing it to control us or run our lives or manipulate how we feel? And that just goes back to the idea of being present and of the mindfulness and where you choose to put your focus. And I think that that's the thing about that feeling of going nowhere fast, is where are you putting your focus, and is it going to make a difference for what you're doing in the moment versus allowing that time to control you in a way. I know there's the semi joke about ADHD, the waiting time, the holding time. You have an appointment at 4 o'clock. That means you need to leave at 3 o'clock. It's 1 o'clock now. Well, I can't do anything because I have to leave at 3 o'clock. I've experienced that so many times in my life where I get stuck because I don't want to start anything because I'm afraid that it's going to take too much time and then I'm not going to be able to leave on time and I'm going to be late. And so there's this anxiety loop that happens around timing sometimes with that. But can you just stop and be realistic, back yourself up to the preparation, and then decide how much time do you have and what is there time for? Oftentimes there's actually time for a lot more than we think. Well, my friend had a rule in her kitchen. It was called the microwave minute. So if you were microwaving something, you had to go clean something for however long the microwave was on. And hilariously, her son stopped microwaving things, but it's amazing how much you can get done in a really short amount of time if you decide and focus on what you're doing.
Well, and the converse of that is that I was just staying on a property where the guy is wanting to sell the property and the property's in a bit of a shambles. And if he just took 1 hour a week and said, I'm going to, for this 1 hour every week, Saturday at 10 o'clock, I am going to go and do an hour of cleanup on my property. by the end of the winter, 4 months from now, that's going to make a dent in it, the value of his property between now and then. And as we all know, you start something, and if you don't actually have anything else to do, you're going to do more. And
Yeah.
you go to people's houses that are a mess. You don't need to see my house. My camper right now is in a shambles because we had a water leak and all the things. But if I was to spend the next hour cleaning this place up, it would be immaculate. It's a very small space. Or I could spend the next hour scrolling on my phone and then be like, I don't have enough time to clean the house.
And resent it,
And
the fact that your house is still not clean.
yeah.
I mean, if we're being honest, we can clean our house in an hour. I mean, really.
Yeah.
If we're being really, really honest, it does not take us that long, especially if we keep up with it. It does not take us that long to clean our house. We have about 1,200 square feet, plus or minus, depending on whether you include the basement spaces or not. We can get it done. Is it fun? Not always, because you're really rushing at that point. But it's still very possible.
Well, and there's all those things that say on Instagram, disappear from a month from social and you will get this much. So instead of spending whatever time you're going to be honest about that you spend on social, you use that time to learn a new skill. Or instead of sitting and scrolling social media the other night, if I had done Duolingo for that amount of time, I would have done an hour of Duolingo. I didn't want to. I could have meditated for an hour. Time is such a fascinating thing, and it is so related to that purpose and that goal. And if your goal is to be intentional about having just free space that doesn't involve picking up the phone, that involves talking to your partner or whatever it is, actually realize that, there's a lot of time. And to your ADHD thing, it's that same person is going to be like, I don't have enough time to do anything. And they've got an appointment at 4:00, and at 3:30, they're going to then suddenly be like, oh, I need to do, and they're going to start sweeping and doing the dishes, and then they'll be late. Yeah. I might know that quite intimately.
I was going to say, ADHD and all of those sorts of neurodivergent things, there is validity, and time blindness is really a real thing. And all of those things are something that people who have to deal with that on a constant basis have to learn somehow for themselves, whatever way works best, to be able to manage it. But the reality is that we all experience times where, like you said, you're in a holding pattern. You have somewhere you need to be in 2 weeks. And between now and then, you don't have anything planned. And it can feel very disorienting to not have that clear plan and path that makes the most sense to get from where you are now to where you need to be in 2 weeks. And sometimes that's where I think we just need to work on being more okay. Being okay being in that limbo space. And I think the times where I've been able to make more progress for myself were times where I didn't make myself wrong for being in the middle of limbo. Whether that was trying to move barns, or whether that was trying to move my house, or whether that was just a shift in the season and the timing of things where I just felt unsettled and didn't feel like I had things pulled together again. We're in the throes of celebrating the holiday seasons here. We just had Thanksgiving in the US. We're heading into Christmas. It's coming up fast. And there's a certain amount of disruption that happens around schedules and routines right now. There's a lot of pressure for obligations and things. And it's like, well, what if that can just be okay? What if it can just be the way it is and not mean anything about who we are, about our value as a person, about our worth? What if it's just okay the way it is?
Well, and people experience that a lot when you're suddenly like, it's Thanksgiving and your family went to Hawaii and you've got no Thanksgiving to go to. And you're like, but I'm supposed to be really stressed and busy and stressing about spending time with the family and all the things that could go wrong, and none of that's happening. So I've got all of this space in my head and wrapped ourselves up in the expectations of the feelings and the things and the stuff because we've condensed everything down so much. But as you say, it's really just that mindset. I said to my husband the other day, I'm like, okay, so we've got 2 weeks. What are we going to do? He's like, well, we don't want to spend too much money and we don't want to put a whole bunch of kilometers on the truck just to drive somewhere. So yeah, we could drive to San Francisco and back and have that experience, but we're going to be back in the, okay, and we're in a campground and then we're not doing anything. We're not really experiencing anything except for seeing the view as we drive past. Or we could turn around and we could spend 2 weeks driving back up the Oregon, Washington coast. And we could stay in a couple of nice campgrounds. And I said to him, I was like, okay, well, let's just say we have this much money. What are we going to do with it? Because whatever we do, we're going to spend this much money. So if we drive to San Francisco, we're going to spend this much money. Maybe we've got time and we've got the resources to go and stay in a hotel for a couple of days. Where would we want to stay in a hotel? What kind of hotel do we want to stay in? What are our constraints? The hotel has to have a parking space that's big enough for our camper. We have a dog. And once you start to take your puzzle pieces and build the puzzle, that intention, and now you feel like you have purpose. And I think the going nowhere fast really comes together when you don't have a purpose. Talk to anyone who doesn't have a job, right? There's no purpose. But then you speak to a retired person who has joined the photo club, and they're like my mum. She's in the photography club, and she's in the boat club, and she's in the this and the that. And most retired people are like, oh my God, how did I ever have time to work? And then there's the grandkids and all these things. Yeah, you don't have a job, but you've got all these things that you've filled your life with to give you purpose. So if we're intentional about what is the purpose, what am I wanting to be? What am I wanting to create? How am I going to intentionally fill my time? I think you can go nowhere fast and feel fulfilled at the same time.
Yeah, I think you're right. I like that.
Any other thoughts on going nowhere
I don't
fast?
think so. I think that really sums it up. A lot of it, I think, is about our purpose. And when we don't feel like we have that, then it does get difficult. But the question is, do we have to have that all figured out? Or can we just be okay with being in limbo for a little while?
Probably not. I think that's exactly what, as human beings, we need to figure out how to do. And when we're in limbo, not stuff. Oh, cool, now I've got more time to just scroll social media.
Yeah.
And figure out.
We're not filling the void
Yeah.
with something that is doing nothing but placating the void.
Yes. And there are, again, we've still got a podcast in the bank because I haven't put it up yet. And I've had time, but I haven't had time. You can be like, but you posted a podcast and you're talking about not having done it. Well, that's because Tash over here is admitting that she didn't post it up. So, I got a lot of work to do.
Listen to that by the time you get to this, so it'll all work out.
It'll all work out, and we'll be back on track. And what you have to expect from us going forward is a whole lot more, because technically I'm going to have a lot more time to focus on how we can really spread the word about our podcast a lot more. And if you are listening to this and you've related to any of this conversation that we've had, please share, please like, please let us know. And I am Natasha Lockey. I am a performance mountain bike and life coach. I am here to help you sort things out. So you want to live your dream life and you're not really sure how to get there. I'm your girl. We do all sorts of fun stuff, future planning, and really figuring out how to dive into your intuition and understand when slowing down to speed up, whether you're on your bicycle or you're in your life. You can connect with me on Facebook, Natasha Lockey. It's where I actually am most of the time. I do have an Instagram, Betty@BettyGoHard. I haven't been there a lot, to be completely honest. So let's just go with Facebook today. That's where you'll find me, and anything that's going on, I will direct you somewhere else. So look me up, follow me on Facebook, and I look forward to hearing from you. Ginny, your turn.
Yeah. I am Ginny Branden. I'm an animal communicator and energy healer for animals and their people too. You can find me on the web at soulpetconnections.com, and Substack is where I'm most active right now. Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube under the same handle. You can find the podcast on ridingintheweeds.com and on all major podcast platforms. As Tash said, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. We would love to hear from you. If you have any ideas for topics, be sure to drop us a comment or a message. We would be happy to dive in and explore. We hope you've enjoyed this little bit of time with us today as we've gone what's happening in our worlds and where in the weeds we've been. We look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.